Hey folks, I'm Mike, and thank you for tagging along again as we listen to the interview of Sander Sassen. Sander really has a lot of perspective on this FPV thing that we do, because he's been there since the very beginning, starting in 2005. That is definitely the earliest origin story that I have heard to date. He's got some really good perspective about what it used to be like, what it used to be about, versus what it is now and what it's about now. And then at the end of our interview, we just kind of talk about some other things. Super fun. But like I said, this is the beginning of the interview and the end of the interview put together. I'd like to thank Sander. He was an awesome guest. He was super great, super chill, good to talk to. Definitely would love to sit down and drink my Diet Coke with this guy. And anyways, I'm going to leave you guys to it. Enjoy your interview. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Michael Rollins Show, because once again, we cannot establish a better name. And I welcome to the show the eminent, the incredible, the amazing Sander Sassen, a man that many of you know from the FPV Pilot Bar. He is our bartender extraordinaire. And Sander, hey, how are you doing, man?
I'm good. Actually, it's let me check the clock. Yeah, it's about 4 o'clock, so I guess I'm about ready for a drink right now.
Yeah, I mean, if it's available, I would definitely say don't hesitate on my account. It's 10 a.m. where I am, so I will not be imbibing anything other than coffee from my Batman cup. Yeah. But
cool. You know, it's always 5 o'clock somewhere, so.
Yeah, well, this is very true. This is very true. So how have you been, man? Life been treating you well?
Yeah, I'm good. Actually, I'm not sure you know, but I sold my shares in Immersion RC, and I'm basically a pilot for hire at the moment. So
all right.
I do quite a number of movie shoots and commercials and everything. That's flying quads instead of the larger DJI and similar drones.
Yeah, that's exciting. Now, have you jumped onto the Cinewhoop train?
Yeah, actually, I have one. I flew it today, to be honest. I had an indoor shoot. There's actually an airsoft competition going on here in Holland, and the production firm that's basically making a movie out of that asked me to provide all the drone footage. So today was a test day to see whether I could fly around like narrow corridors and through door openings and windows and all that stuff. Trying to capture a competition while it's basically going on. So
that's awesome.
I used the Cinewhoop to do that.
So tell me, we always start these interviews with your origin story. So how did you get into drones? You've been into them for quite a while. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what is your origin story? And, what kind of history can you bring to the table to kind of inform those of us that are getting started now?
Right. Well, I was actually there at the very beginnings of FPV. I was one of the people pioneering some of the technology that we use today and which we basically take for granted. I mean, back in 2005, nobody flew FPV, and I was one of the first people to actually do that together with a bunch of guys in France. And you actually know one of these guys probably from his very famous golf course video. And Denis is his name, and he's done one of the first videos of a GoPro or a similar camera on a Easy Star flying around a golf course, and that video still to this day is one of the first videos that ever was presented on YouTube featuring. So that's actually a long time ago. And yeah, I'm actually a electronics engineer by profession, and I basically started looking at possibilities to build my own gear, and you start off ordering stuff online. Back then, all the equipment was basically used for CCTV. So you're buying CCTV cameras, you're buying CCTV transmitters, and you're trying to make that work, put it up in an aircraft at that point, because quads or multirotors weren't even a thing back then.
Yeah.
And you started flying that way, and you had a little 5 or 10 inch monitor on the ground with a big battery, and that's basically how you flew for the first 2-3 years. I think I used that configuration. At some point then somebody started making video goggles, more from a perspective of using them for video games rather than for FPV. But they had a composite video input, and that was obviously perfect for what I was trying to do. So I think it was somewhere in 2007 that I started basically trying to see whether there was a market for this kind of stuff. And yeah, a couple of friends of mine that I knew from a local hobby club started to ask whether I could build them some transmitters and some setups for their planes, and I started doing that. And it wasn't too long after that, other people kind of started doing the same thing. If you go back to 2006, 2007, you'll see a lot of topics in RC groups talking about FPV and people pioneering antennas, pioneering video links, stuff like that. And yeah, I was right there with all the other guys, designing antennas, just thinking of new ideas. For example, the OSD, which we take for granted nowadays, was introduced back then. Actually, the Easy OSD, one of the first OSDs built by Immersion RC, which was sold on the market. So that goes back at least a decade. So that's a long time.
That's crazy. So were you flying? I guess it wasn't multi-rotor back then, though, was it? It was fixed wing.
Yeah, it's all fixed wing. I basically started off with using an Easy Star because the name implies it already. They're easy to fly. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to be on the sticks all the time, so you have plenty of time to look around. And what I had back then was a mechanical head tracker attached to my head, so you could look around, and then the servo on the plane would do the same thing. So it was more like sightseeing. It was different than what we do today. I mean, today it's more about speed and hitting gaps and doing challenges and tricks and flippy floppies and whatnot. Back then, it was more about, I want to be up in the air. I want to see things from that perspective.
That is really cool. And I know that, when I started, which was way like a decade after you're talking, so I started in 2016, right. Which still to this day, I mean, there's so many new people in the hobby. You say you started in 2016 and everybody's like, whoa, dude, you've been there forever. It's like, no, not really. Not at all. But I had a DJI Flame Wheel 450, one of the knockoffs, though. It wasn't the original. Right. And I stole my son's GoPro, which he has never let me live down. He's never forgiven me. And mounted it to the front of this thing, and I would fly at line of sight and try to pick up as much GoPro footage as I could. And the thing had 8-inch props, and I mean it was just 7-8-inch props. It was a nutso machine to fly. But yeah, at the same time, I was looking for that unique perspective, so I totally get that. So, the flying fixed wing is for FPV back in 2005, 2006, 2007. That's a long time ago, man. How has the hobby advanced since then? I mean, what do you think is, if you had to pick the single biggest advancement in that time period, what do you think it would be?
Most people will probably think it's the reliability of the video link, but actually, if you look back on my YouTube channel to some of the earlier videos I posted way back 2008, 2007, you can see me flying out to 10 kilometers without a single glitch. But that was with a antenna tracker with large antennas, 2.4 gigahertz for video, so not 5.8. So I don't think video has really come that far. I think if you look at it from a mini quad perspective, I think the ability to fly anywhere you want to go, basically within a certain radius, obviously within the range of your control and your video, but then just do whatever you want. You can pop into a hole, you can check things out at a distance. You couldn't do that then. I mean, back then you only have fixed wing, and obviously you can't hover, you can't fly backwards. So you really had to take care of where you were going. And the other thing is, if you were flying a Easy Star or a Fun Jet back in the day, these things didn't track too well. So you were always kind of flying in between things, trying to keep it straight. And nowadays, especially with the properly tuned mini quad, I mean, it flies straight. It tracks perfectly. Yeah. So I think if I had to pick something, I think the ability to go places you want to go without too much restrictions, provided you are capable of the sticks, obviously. But if you've mastered that, then there's really no limitation on where you can go, other than, hey, I might lose the quad if I fly over water and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I think at some point you realize, okay, if I don't do it, then at some point I'm never gonna, because there's always going to be this fear of losing equipment, and there's gonna be a day in everybody's FPV career you lose a quad over water or on the top of a building or somewhere else where you can't get to, and for a lot of people it's a hard pill to swallow, but I think it's just it's one of those hidden costs in this hobby. I mean, you do risk losing the quad every time you take off.
Well, the flip side to that is if you're never willing to risk losing the quad, you never get the footage.
No. I think the thing that I've learned through the better part of the decade is that, and that's why most of my videos start with challenge accepted. If you don't challenge yourself, if you don't allow yourself to basically try new things, you're going to be doing the same laps around the field, the same tricks you've learned since day one, basically, and you're not progressing. Oh. Yeah, there's actually a buddy of mine, my co-conspirator with the FPV pilot bar, Fred Provost.
Yeah, Fred Provost.
He's one of those guys as well. He's not pushing himself hard enough. And if you don't push yourself, then at some point you just get stuck at a certain level and you don't make any progress. And that's a shame, because I think anybody that's willing to put in the hours can become a really, really good pilot. I mean, it's more about stick time than talent, or at least it is from my perspective.
I think that's an interesting statement, that it's more about stick time than talent. I'm going through, I'm not one of these guys that keeps around a ton of drones, despite, the 3 or 4 that you see on the wall. Only one of those is, only one of those is flying right now. Everything else is in some state of disrepair. I recently, and being a dad with a full-time job that actually takes 60 hours a week, and I'm sure you can probably relate to a certain degree, finding time to fly has been difficult, and finding time to build has been nearly impossible. Yeah. And I had a buddy. I just reached out. I was like, hey man, a guy named Rob Garland. I said, can I pay you to build this equipment that I have? Like, I'd already bought everything. He had, he wouldn't take any money because he's a mate, and he put something together, and I've been now getting used to a completely new setup, which is so interesting and fun to do, because it's like, oh well, my throttle inputs, my stick inputs are all different now, and it really drives home the point that, if you want to fly smooth, if you want to be good at something, you have to have practice, not only in the hobby in general, but on the machines that you're flying.
Well, actually, let me give you a pro tip there. Yeah. What I often see is guys arrive at the field and they have with them 4 or 5, maybe even 6 or 7 different quads, all with different setups, all with different motors, different props, different settings. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, if that's what you learn on, you're making it really, really hard on yourself. I mean, the best way to learn and the quickest way to learn is to build 5 or whatever budget allows, 4 or 5 identical quads, which are exactly the same in terms of motors, props, settings, rates, whatever. Mm-hmm. And you fly those, because then you get used to a certain feel. And that's actually much, much better than flying different quads all the time.
Yeah, I agree. As a matter of fact, I have, in my previous life as a YouTuber, before I found this whole interview series, I had a segment, I would do these like dad FPV is what I called them.
Right.
And one of them was like, what are the 5 mistakes that beginners make? And like one of the number 1 mistakes that I made, and so many people that I know make, is they change their equipment all the time.
Yeah, which is not smart.
Yeah, no, you've got to every motor, every prop, every flight controller, every ESC even flies a little bit differently. Yeah. And when you start mixing and matching a ton of things, it's just like, man, this is such a pain.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, that's the main thing here, that especially if you fly only a couple of packs per week, and if you then fly those packs spread out across different quads, you really don't give yourself the opportunity to learn the specifics of that particular quad. No, I mean, you flew one packet, and then you take the next quad and then fly that, and it's totally different. Then you have to adjust again, and then that adjustment basically, undoes everything you've done with the previous pack, with the previous quad.
Right.
So my suggestion would always be build a couple of the same quads, make them identical in terms of rates and settings and everything. Fly those for a lot of packs, and then if you're comfortable with that, you can definitely switch. I mean, I do fly different quads as well, but I also give myself at least 2 or 3 practice packs after I switched, because I know otherwise I'll just suck at flying, because it just feels different, and you really need a little bit of time to adjust to that.
Yeah, that is sage words of wisdom from a man who has been there for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I guess it's pretty much, I mean, I'm not sure whether you ride motorbikes or whatever, but I mean, every time you're familiar to your own motorbike. You step, you know exactly the way it feels. The moment you step on a different motorbike, it feels all different. I mean, it brakes differently, it accelerates differently, gear switching is a bit different, the steering feels different. It's exactly the same thing here. A lot of people seem to think, especially since I'm older, oh, he can't fly. And he can't do this, and he can't do that. And the funny thing is, the moment that I arrive on a movie set, I had a shoot not too long ago, and I was flying there, and I had a monitor with me. Behind the monitor were the director, one of the screenwriters, and some of the other guys on set. They were watching my feed, and I was just diving through stuff, and they were flabbergasted. They were just, their jaws were dropping to the ground, and I was like, to me it was very simple stuff. It just dodge and weave and just basically maneuvering through stuff. They were floored. They were like, we've never seen a drone do this. I'm like, guys, you have no idea what's possible. So the next take, I gave them some real good footage. I really basically went all out, and they were like, what the fuck? What was this? This is unbelievable. And that just goes to show that what you and I think is good piloting is all a matter of context. I mean, the moment you basically show somebody that's not familiar with this hobby what we can do, a lot of people are going to go, wow, that's amazing. So, I mean, if you can then compare yourself to the best pilots in the industry, you're not being fair to yourself, because you should really compare yourself to people that are not in this hobby, because that gives you a much better perspective of what you've achieved than comparing yourself to the best ones out there. I mean, just take anybody that drives a car every day. I mean, if you compare that to the driving done by a Formula One driver, I mean, you're not going to compare. But is that a fair comparison to make? I don't think so.
That is very true. I actually just posted. I don't put flight edits out very often. But I went flying yesterday for the first time in about 2 weeks, and it wasn't quite that long. It was about a week. And I reviewed the footage. It's like I said, it was all about throttle, just practicing my throttle control on this new gear. And I decided to put an edit to it, and it was very simple. It just had some real chill piano music as the backing, background. And I posted it on my YouTube channel, but then I posted it on my Facebook channel, my Facebook, profile, whatever, where all my family, all my friends are. It's quickly being overrun by drone people, but and it's almost gratifying, because like you forget how amazing this stuff is, even for as simple. I wasn't doing anything spectacular. I was hitting a few gaps in trees, and I was doing a few things here and there. But the reaction from my friends and family that were not drone people were just like, oh my God, that's amazing. That's awesome. My dad, my dad goes and shares it out onto his feed, and like, this is what my son is doing. Right. And it's like, well, that was actually literally just 15 minutes worth of work. But you're right. There is a level of awe that we just take for granted when we fly the way that we fly. And,
Yeah, and even simple stuff. I mean, I posted a 40-second clip of me flying over the same tulip fields that we started this conversation off with.
Yeah.
And it's just me flying diagonally across a field of tulips at basically, yeah, this high off the tops of the the tulips. And that was nothing special. I mean, that doesn't take much skill other than some good throttle control and being able to basically take it, flying for a straight line. There's nothing else involved with that. And I got so many positive reactions from that. And if I then compare it to some of my other videos where I'm going all out with tricks and flips and rolls and whatnot, which is way more difficult, which don't get much views, I'm like, okay, maybe it's the simple stuff done properly, which is way more impressive than the flippy floppy and all that.
That is, it's funny. I interviewed Cricket recently, and his will come out, I think, a little bit before yours. But we were talking a lot about the cinematic flying versus the flippy floppies. Yeah. And it's like as a guy that flies, when I watch Mr. Steele, I realize that I'm watching some kind of mad genius at work. Right. And like he goes and he flippy floppies and all of a sudden you come out the other side, you don't even know where you are. I mean, he could have thrown 7 cuts in there and you would never be able to catch it, but he probably doesn't. But it's very confusing. Yeah, when you throw in the flippy floppies. And then you get some of the guys that are a little bit smoother, a little bit more cinematic, that are not as intent on the, all the tricks they can pack into one pack. And like a Cricket or like a even a Johnny FPV. Yeah. And it becomes a much easier thing to watch.
Yeah, it also takes, I mean, it's funny you just mentioned your father, but I had a similar experience with mine. Because he also came back with, hey, Sander, that video you just recently posted and you doing all kinds of tricks in there, I really don't like that. It's too fast. I can't follow what you're doing. It loses its appeal. Whereas my droning friends were like, hey, Sander, that's a cool video. Oh, some nice tricks in there. So you see that balance between those two, that's difficult to do. And I think some of these guys go a bit overboard. And on the other hand, I've seen some really cool videos. I mean, Benoit Vic, Fink, if I pronounce his name correctly. He's one of those guys that really finds a good balance between cinematic and tricks. And he's done some videos where he had one of him following a skateboarder earlier this week, and it was like,
oh I saw that. That was unreal.
It's beautiful.
That was unreal.
Yeah, and that to me is more of a promotion for the hobby than a guy doing flippy floppies. Despite the fact that, taking Mr. Steele for example, he's a very, very talented guy. And no doubt about that. But for some people, that's just difficult to watch. And the cinematic stuff, especially like the example I just gave, the skateboard video, that's just, I mean, anybody can watch that and be in awe of the flying and the way the images are captured. And you wonder, how did you do this? How did he do that? Especially if you're not a pilot. I mean, I'm looking at it obviously with my pilot. Actually, I have a pilot hat on. I'm looking at it with a pilot head. So I trying to figure out how exactly he's doing the moves, but somebody that's not familiar with that just takes it at face value, and even then it's still beautiful and mesmerizing. So that totally. So
that brings me to probably the last question for our interview, which is, and I think this is a great segue, right? Because we're talking about what does it take to film cinematically? What does it take to entice the masses into this hobby that we have? Yeah. What's next for Sander? What are you doing now? You've sold off your immersion shares, but what's next?
Well, because I obviously worked for Immersion C for the better part of a decade, I came into contact with all kinds of people. And some of these people were working in professional video production, movie directors, cameramen, directors, all those kind of people. And I've often had the question, hey, can you use your little drone for doing this and that? And sometimes I said, yeah, sure. And they really didn't ask any further. It's only since the last year and a half or so that I've been approached by the same people asking, "Hey, Sander, that drone of yours, can you actually do this and that, and can you actually come and show us that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I've been to a few of these screenings where they had an idea in their head. One example is a production I'm working on right now, where they want to mimic the flight of a bee, like a honeybee. And obviously, what better way to do that than with a drone? I mean, maneuvering through flowers, through the trees, orbiting somebody, stuff like that. So they've asked me whether I could do that. So I got invited for a screening, and I basically done exactly what they had in mind, and they were just blown away. And that kind of launched this whole new career. I'm going to put it between brackets because I don't know what I'm doing with it right now. It's just, to me, it feels like it has a future, but maybe in the next couple of weeks something else comes up and I might go in that direction. But right now I'm perfectly happy and yeah, basically very thankful that I'm allowed to do these kind of things. Because I'm at movie sets now shooting commercials and movies, flying my little race drone. And I mean, what can you ask for it? I mean, yeah,
amazing.
I've done more flying at more insane spots that I've done in the last couple of years in the last year or so. So that's always interesting. I mean, one of the most memorable trips I've had in the past was actually with the Rotor Riot crew. We went to Chernobyl, and I remember how that actually came about because Jack Capper at some point posted in the Rotor Riot community whether there's anybody familiar with that area. So I pinged him and said, "Hey, Chad, are you by any chance thinking of visiting Chernobyl?" And he said, "Yes, we are." I said, "Okay, whatever you do and whatever it's going to cost, I want to come along." And he said, "Sander, as long as you pay for your own expenses, we'd be happy to have you along." So that's exactly what we've done. And yeah, that was still one of the most memorable trips I've made to this day. And I mean, the idea of flying to a spot with so much history and the fact that most of the surroundings are still radioactive, and you walking around there. I mean, if I look at the videos, I still get the same vibe. But if people haven't been there themselves, they just look at the videos. You don't capture that same feeling because it's a very eerie, mysterious, kind of dark feeling when you're walking around there, knowing what happened there, and looking at all the. One of the things that was most like a slap across the face for you is at some point you're walking in a pretty dense forest, and then you look up and you see a lantern post, and you look a little further, you see another one, and then you realize I'm actually walking on the main road, which has now been overgrown by trees up to 20, 30 meters high. And so in the span of just 30 years, nature has taken full control of that entire area again. And that to me was eye-opening, because then at that point you realize what happens if for whatever reason we as a species would die out. Within 100, maybe 200 years, most of what we've built will have been overgrown and be totally lost to nature again. So that realization actually is pretty humbling, because then you realize, okay, we're in the grand scheme of things, in the whole history of the planet, we're just a passing phase. So even with all the debate about climate change and all that, I mean, we're just one of those things that happens to the planet, and the planet just doesn't care. I mean, look at the dinosaurs, look at all the meteorites that slammed into the Earth, killing off most of the life that was walking around the Earth at that point. And which is another chapter in a long line of chapters.
That is, I think we should leave it there. That's a deep thought for sure.
No.
So, Sander, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been a delightful talk, and I definitely wish you all the best in your new career. And I hope it does. I truly hope it becomes a career for you. I see, you're starting to see this more and more. There's being a crossover from, like, you've got guys like Steele and Johnny FPV, and now you, that are crossing over into Hollywood movies, whatever you want to call it. And that's an exciting place for our hobby to go. So
yeah, definitely. Well, and the other thing is, obviously, because of the fact that I have a full development lab here in the Netherlands, where we used to develop stuff for immersion university, I'm also in a perfect position to do custom build exactly for tailored to spec for the movie industry. I mean, that one of the things that I've built in the last couple of weeks is a drone which uses a specific camera. It's like a miniature red camera.
Oh wow!
Because they wanted 8K resolution on set and not shoot with a GoPro. So I'm now flying this very expensive little race drone with the camera on. And that's something I obviously I designed in-house, made all the drawings, did all the CNC and all the 3D printing and everything, and that really puts me in a unique position. That's actually one of the things as an engineer I enjoy very much, because at some point you're in a meeting with the director, with a bunch of the other guys that are shooting this movie, and they say, "Hey, Sander, we have this idea, but we don't know how to do this. Can't you build us something? Can't you basically work your magic and make this happen?" And I'm always up for a challenge. So I said, okay, sure. Let's see what the requirements are, and I'll come up with something. So in the weeks following on from that meeting, I kind of refined that, designed and made a few prototypes, and we now have something that everybody is pleased with and happy with, and that's what we'll use.
That's exciting. And a flying red camera? Oh God, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. You don't want to.
You don't want to crash that.
There's no Best Buy policy where you take it back and you get a new one. No.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much. Where can people find you?
The best way to find me is at quadpilot.com, or basically just hit me up on Facebook. I mean, I think I do a lot of interaction with people through Facebook, and that's how people usually find me, and that's just fine with me. I mean, the funny thing is, everywhere I go, and I've been all around the world, going to races and visiting spots and everything, and I always end up talking to people saying, "Hey, do you have Facebook?" And yes, I do. And then that easily becomes a way of exchanging details and allowing people to get in touch with each other, and that just very convenient.
Well, good. Thank you. I will see you at the Pilot Bar.
All right, fantastic.
And
what can I get you? What kind of drink do you like?
You know what? I am. I'll be honest with you. I'm not drinking right now. But I will take a really good Diet Coke.
Okay, fantastic. With ice and a little.
With ice, yes, with ice, definitely. All right, man. Thank you.
A slice of lemon as well.
No, I don't want to ruin the purity of the Diet Coke. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
Why add something that God did not intend to be there in the first place?
Okay. All right. One Diet Coke.
So that is it. That is our interview with Sander Sassen. He was a great guy. I really enjoyed it. I'm very happy that he could come along and interview with me. Thank you, Sander, for everything that you've done, everything that you did, and I look forward to maybe talking with you in the future. At any rate, my name is Mike. This has been an interview. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.